Hello. So in episode 1 we discussed remote viewing broadly, and in episode 2 today we're going to discuss focus 10 and the 10 state as the Monroe Institute would like to call it, or does call it. Excuse me. When people hear remote viewing, they imagine seeing things. To be honest, sadly, that's not what this was. It was a state of consciousness. And once you felt that, you realised everything started there, okay? So this is around the same time as the remote viewing, okay, that I came across something that completely shifted my understanding. Bizarrely, and I think this is true, must have been, in the back of Nexus magazine, there was an advert for the Monroe Institute and for a brochure. So because we didn't have internet and email and all that kind of stuff, we had to rely on a good old-fashioned phone call. And I rang them up and gave them my details, and they said they'd send me one in the post. To be honest, I didn't put too much weight to that. It was coming from America, right? And that seemed like a long way away back then. But behold, a few weeks later, I came home from work and there was an interesting envelope on my mat. And it was indeed the brochure from the Monroe Institute. To be honest, it blew my mind. It was like an adult sweet shop catalogue, basically. I had never seen so many structured meditation sessions as I did at that point in my life, okay? And I remember reading it and thinking, how does this place even exist? How do we not know about this? So somewhere in the world, there was this retreat where people were going to explore altered states of consciousness. Not in a vague way, not in a mystical way, but in a very structured, guided, almost scientific way. So there, you could be wired up to an EEG machine where they would gently guide you into different levels of awareness. And their control room would, they'd add like a comms link into you, so you would be able to be guided. So once they've realised where you're at, they would then guide you, trigger you, okay? So very progressive work, right? Wasn't about just relaxation at all. It went much further than that, and further than most people would ever have gone. And it wasn't just the process, it was the setting, The Monroe Institute is based in the Blue Ridge Mountains in Virginia. It's very quiet, natural, still, somewhere you could walk and reflect, integrate. Even now, I still think about going. At the height of probably when I almost went, we then got hit with COVID. And then after that, I've spent the last 5 years in life, dealing with life. So just not got there yet, but will. But what that brochure and going forward gave me was a framework, because I'd already started experiencing stuff similar. And I think it was just the fact that I didn't have a name for it yet. And that's where the F10 comes in. So the simplest way to describe it is this, and I think this is kind of textbook out of the Institute as well. They call it mind awake, body asleep, okay? The first thing you would notice is the shift in your mind, okay? There's this openness, this expansiveness. It feels like your awareness has widened out, like you're taking in more but without effort. And at the same time, your body becomes incredibly heavy, still, almost like it's not yours anymore, And there's this deep calm and a kind of detachment that comes with that calm. But interestingly enough, you're aware of everything around you, but yet none of it has any impact on you. It's like you're present, but not involved. And sometimes sensory information becomes almost tangible, not visual, not dramatic, but actually felt. In that state, it genuinely feels like your mind is fully awake, but your body is completely asleep. I couldn't move in that state, but that also didn't bother me, not even slightly, because I understood what was happening. I knew I was essentially allowing my awareness to separate from my physical body. So that perception could expand. To be honest, I was never one of those people that got scared about this kind of stuff. I was never hesitant. If anything, it felt completely safe to me. Mainly because I felt cocooned when I was in that state. There was a comfort in it, a calm certainty. And as you go deeper into those states, things do start to change. But of course, famously, I'd like to digress right now, but I am gonna stay firm because we've got 8 other episodes coming, and they will have their turn and they will have their story. Time doesn't behave normally there. A 45-minute session could feel like 5 minutes, but flip side to that, it could also feel like 3 hours. It all depended on what you were doing, or more importantly, where your awareness was, right? But one thing became very clear. I wasn't operating on linear time anymore. It introduced something else entirely, and something that's very hard to explain, but very obvious when you experience it. The transition into that state wasn't abrupt, it was gradual. But there was always a moment where you realised you'd crossed over. And the closest way I can describe it is this. It felt like being above everything, like standing at the edge of the atmosphere, looking down on the planet. Peaceful, still. From up there, everything looked calm, beautiful even. But you're not in it anymore. You're just observing. There's a sense of freedom in that, like you've stepped outside of normal experience. Emotionally, it was always calm, never uneasy, and always curious. Curiosity is what got me there in the first place. And it never left, to be honest. 30 years on, I'm still curious. If anything, it got stronger. I wanted to know what was on the other side of that state. What else was accessible? By that point, I'd read all the Robert Monroe books, and I was all in. Still am. He was a pioneer. And what drove him and what drove me were the same things. Curiosity. Coming back out of those sessions wasn't always smooth, to be honest about that. Sometimes you're in so deep in that state, so heavy that if you come out too quickly, it can feel a bit rough, a bit disorientating, like your awareness is back, but your body hasn't quite caught up yet, right? And that would happen especially if somebody interrupted you or you came out of that session earlier than expected. There's a kind of integration phase where you just sit in there, trying to settle back into yourself. And it can feel a bit off. Not wrong, just not fully aligned. I used to reach for a cup of tea and maybe something sweet. And that would help me ground myself again, bringing everything back into balance. Because explaining that feeling to someone else, especially someone who's never experienced it, that isn't easy. Trying to describe that you feel slightly out of your body, even though you're sitting right there, is a strange thing. But that state, focus 10, that was the doorway. That was the access point. Because remote viewing was never about forcing something to happen. It was about getting into the right state first and letting perception come, from there. So hopefully that adds a new layer to this series. And episode 3, we're going to be touching on targets. Stay tuned.